Before we continue, I need you to understand something. This story isn't simple. It's tangled in emotion, blurred boundaries, and choices that may challenge your beliefs. If at any point it feels like too much, step away. Take a moment. Turn back if you must. But if you choose to stay, listen closely, because every word matters. For the longest time, I thought I had my life figured out. Not perfect, not by any means, but manageable. I worked hard, paid my bills, took care of my son, Rio. I was doing what I was supposed to do, raising him right, making sure he had everything he needed. And for a while, that was enough. At least, I thought it was. But life has a way of shifting beneath your feet. Of taking what you thought was solid and turning it into something you don't quite recognize. And before you know it, you're standing in the middle of something you never saw coming, wondering how the hell you got there. That's where I found myself. For 21 years, it's been just me and Rio. I raised him on my own after his father left, and in a lot of ways, we were more than just mother and son, we were a team. We had our routines, our little traditions. It was always the two of us against the world. And I was proud of that. I was proud of the life I built for us. It wasn't always easy, but we got through it together. People would always say things like, "You must be so strong to do it all on your own." And I'd smile and nod, like it was a badge of honor. But strength has a funny way of turning into something else when you're alone long enough. I never really thought about how lonely I was. Or maybe I just didn't let myself. When you spend years putting someone else first, you stop noticing your own empty spaces. I had my job, my house, my son. I had responsibilities. I didn't have time to sit around thinking about what was missing. And even when I did try, dating, meeting new people, it never seemed to work out. Men my age were either chasing something younger or carrying too much baggage of their own. And the ones that seemed interested? They didn't really see me. Not all of me, anyway. So after a while, I just stopped looking. I convinced myself I didn't need it. That I was fine. And maybe that was the biggest lie I ever told myself. Through everything, Rio was always there. And not just as my son. He was my rock. The one person I could always count on. He saw me in ways no one else did. He knew when I was tired before I even said a word. He knew when I was upset, even when I tried to hide it. He had this way of knowing exactly what I needed, sometimes before I even knew myself. I told myself that was just because we were close. That's what happens when it's just the two of you for so long. You learn each other's rhythms. You lean on each other. That's normal, right? That's what I told myself. But looking back now, I wonder if I missed something. If I ignored the signs, because I didn't want to see them. Or maybe, because I didn't know how to. I don't know when it started. Not exactly. It wasn't one big moment, not some dramatic turning point. It was slow. So slow I didn't even notice it at first. But something changed. Maybe it was the way he started looking at me. Or the way his voice sounded different when he spoke to me, calmer, more certain. Maybe it was how he started stepping in more, taking care of things before I even had the chance to ask. At first, I chalked it up to him growing up. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a man now. And I was proud of that. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where something in my stomach tightened, and I didn't know why. Moments where I felt something shift between us, like an invisible thread pulling tighter. I never said anything. I never let myself think about it for too long. I told myself I was imagining things. That it was nothing. But deep down, something told me it wasn't. Rio started taking care of me in ways that felt different. Not just as a son, but something else. He'd tell me to sit down while he handled things around the house. He'd remind me to eat, to rest, to slow down. And there was something in his voice, in the way he said it, that made me listen. And the strangest part? I didn't mind. I told myself it was normal. That he was just protective. That I had raised him to be strong, to be dependable, to take charge when needed. But some nights, when I was alone, I'd replay certain moments in my head. The way he touched my shoulder. The way he looked at me. The way I felt when he was near. And I would push those thoughts away, bury them so deep they couldn't breathe. Because the last thing I wanted to admit was that I didn't want them to go away. People like to believe that life is simple. That right and wrong are clear-cut, that certain lines aren't meant to be crossed. But what no one tells you is how easy it is to step over that line without even realizing it. And once you do, there's no going back. If you're still with me, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like this. Trust me, there's so much more to uncover. It started with something small. A conversation over dinner. A moment that should have come and gone without a second thought. But looking back, I think that was the night something shifted. The night things started moving in a direction I wasn't ready for, or maybe, one I had been ignoring for too long. It was a Wednesday. I remember because Wednesdays were always the nights Rio and I had dinner together, just the two of us, no distractions. It was our thing. Something we never missed, no matter how busy life got. And that night, everything felt normal, at least at first. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, plates between us, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I had just gotten back from a date. Another one of those meaningless, awkward dinners where you spend the whole night pretending to be interested in someone who doesn't really see you. Someone who only hears the parts of your story they want to hear and ignores the rest. I told Rio about it, not thinking much of it. I laughed, shook my head, called the guy a waste of makeup and good shoes. It was supposed to be a joke, something lighthearted. But Rio, he didn't laugh. He set his fork down, his expression unreadable. For a second, I thought he was about to say something, but he just sat there, staring at his plate like he was trying to hold something back. "Why do you even bother?" he finally said, his voice low, almost casual, too casual. I blinked at him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, but there was an edge to it, like he was keeping his emotions in check. "These guys. You always come home disappointed. Why even put yourself through it?" I scoffed, waving him off. "Well, I can't exactly spend the rest of my life alone, Rio." He was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he looked up at me, his gaze steady, unreadable. "Why not?" The question hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. It shouldn't have meant anything. But the way he said it, the way he was looking at me, something about it made my stomach tighten. I let out a small, awkward laugh. Because people aren't meant to be alone forever. His jaw tensed slightly, his fingers curling against the table. "You're not alone." Silence. Thick, heavy. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. The moment stretched, hanging between us like something fragile, something I didn't dare touch. And then, just as quickly as it came, Rio picked up his fork again, taking another bite of his food like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just said something that sent my thoughts spiraling. I forced myself to do the same, to pretend I didn't feel the shift in the air. But that night, when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his words kept replaying in my head. "You're not alone." I don't know what I was thinking that night. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all. It wasn't planned. I didn't mean to end up outside his door, standing there in the dim light of the hallway, feeling ridiculous. But my feet had carried me there before my mind could catch up, and by the time I realized what I was doing, I had already knocked. There was silence for a moment. A second where I thought maybe he hadn't heard me, and I could still turn back before this became something I had to explain to myself. But then the door opened. Rio stood there, looking down at me, his face shadowed in the soft glow from his bedside lamp. His eyes swept over me, slowly, like he was trying to read between the lines of what wasn't being said. And in that moment, I felt small. Not in a way that made me afraid. In a way that made me realize how much space he took up now, how much he had grown, how much he had changed. He didn't ask why I was there. He just looked at me for a long moment, then stepped aside, leaving the door open. I should have walked away. I should have said, never mind, made an excuse, gone back to my own bed. But instead, I stepped inside. The air in his room felt different. Warmer. Closer. I don't know if it was real or if it was just in my head, but I felt it anyway. Rio shut the door behind me, slow and deliberate. When he turned back around, there was something in his expression, something unreadable, something waiting. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual, softer. I shook my head, suddenly feeling foolish. "It's nothing, but before I could finish, he moved closer. And before I could stop myself, I let him. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me against him, his chin resting lightly on top of my head. And just like that, the rest of the world disappeared. I don't know how long we stood there. It could have been seconds, minutes, I couldn't tell. I only knew the feeling. The solidness of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth that settled over me like a heavy blanket. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. "You deserve better," he murmured, his voice low, almost like he wasn't sure if he wanted me to hear it. My hands curled against the fabric of his shirt, gripping it tighter than I should have. I didn't know why. Maybe I just didn't want to let go yet. My breathing slowed to match his, and that was when I realized it. Our bodies were in sync, moving together in a quiet rhythm, something unspoken passing between us. Something I couldn't name. The moment stretched too long. My heart was beating too fast. My skin felt too warm. And suddenly, I knew, I had to get out of there. I pulled away. Too fast. Too sudden. Like I had been caught doing something I shouldn't, even though nothing had happened. Rio let me go without a word, but his eyes stayed on me, searching, waiting. I forced out a laugh, shaky, awkward. I should go to bed." He didn't say anything. He just nodded, slow, unreadable. I turned and walked out of his room, closing the door behind me. And as I stood in the hallway, staring at the floor, trying to gather myself, I realized something. I could still feel him. The weight of his arms. The warmth of his breath. The way his voice had wrapped around me like something I could almost sink into. And the worst part? I didn't want to stop feeling it. I told myself it was nothing. A moment of weakness, nothing more. But in the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why did that moment feel so different? Why did I feel something I shouldn't? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Felt the way his arms tightened around me, the way his voice wrapped around my name like it belonged to him. And then there were my dreams. Restless. Too vivid. Dreams where his touch lingered, where the space between us disappeared. I'd wake up breathless, heart pounding, a sick sort of guilt curling in my stomach. And Rio, he started acting differently too. More assertive. More present. His touches lingered longer. His voice carried a weight it didn't before. And when he looked at me, it was like he saw something I wasn't ready to name. I kept telling myself nothing had changed. That it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew better. I thought I could forget that night. I thought if I ignored it, buried it deep enough, it would go away. But thoughts like that don't disappear. They settle in the corners of your mind, waiting. And no matter how much you try to drown them out, they whisper back to you when you least expect it. And I was listening. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was a few nights later, or maybe the very next day. I can't remember. All I know is that once the thought took root, I couldn't stop myself from feeding it. I would catch myself staring into space, my mind wandering back to that moment in his room. The way his arms felt around me. The way my body had melted against his without hesitation. The way I had pulled away, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of what it meant that I didn't want to. The questions came next. The kind I didn't want to ask myself, but couldn't seem to stop. Why had it felt so different? Why had my heart raced the way it did? Why did my body react the way it had? Why couldn't I stop thinking about it? I knew it was wrong to let my mind go there. I knew I was stepping onto dangerous ground, but the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it came back. And then, one night, I made a mistake. It started innocently, at least, that's what I told myself. A late-night internet search, nothing more. A simple question typed into the search bar, my fingers hovering over the keyboard for a long time before I pressed enter. Power dynamics in relationships. The results flooded the screen instantly: articles, forums, personal experiences. I clicked on one, then another, then another. I told myself I was just curious, that I just wanted to understand what was happening in my own head, that I wasn't actually looking for answers. But I was lying to myself. Because the deeper I read, the more I felt something inside me unraveling. The descriptions, the emotions, the experiences, everything I had been trying to ignore was spelled out in front of me in black and white. The idea of surrender, of letting go, of handing over control to someone you trust. The fear. The thrill. The helplessness. My stomach twisted, my skin warm, my breath shallow. I closed the laptop too fast, shoved it away like it had burned me. But the words were already in my head, repeating over and over. Submission. And the worst part? I wasn't repulsed by it. I wasn't scared. Not really. I was intrigued. That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, my mind spinning, my hands clammy. I had spent the last hour trying to convince myself that it was just curiosity, that it didn't mean anything. But no matter how much I tried to reason with myself, I couldn't ignore the truth. I wanted to know what it felt like. I wanted to understand why the idea of it made my breath catch, why my body tensed at the thought of surrendering control, why I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been missing something my entire life. I didn't hear him come in at first. I was so lost in my own head that I didn't notice him standing there, watching me. "You okay?" His voice made me jump, my heart slamming against my ribs. I turned too quickly, my pulse racing. He was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. I opened my mouth, tried to form some excuse, but nothing came out. I must have looked guilty because his eyes narrowed slightly. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, swallowing hard. "Nothing. I'm fine." Rio didn't move. He just kept watching me, his gaze steady, unwavering. And then, after a long moment, he asked the question that changed everything. "Do you trust me?" I froze. Of all the things he could have said, I wasn't expecting that. My mouth went dry. My chest tightened. Something in his voice made my stomach twist, something low and steady, something calm yet firm. Like he already knew the answer. And the truth was, I did. I had always trusted him. He had always been the one person I could rely on, the one who had never let me down, the one who had always known what I needed before I did. So I nodded. He took a step forward, slow and deliberate, his gaze locked onto mine. My breath caught as he reached out, his fingers tilting my chin up until I was looking directly at him. And then he said it. "Then let me take care of you." The air in the room shifted. My pulse pounded in my ears. Everything inside me screamed to step back, to break the moment, to pretend I didn't understand what he meant. But I did. I understood every word. I should have said no. I should have laughed it off, told him he was being ridiculous, turned around and walked away. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, my body betraying me, before my mind could catch up. My breathing was shallow, my chest rising and falling too fast. My hands trembled at my sides. And then, Rio's voice cut through the silence again. "Say the word, and I'll stop." It was a test. A way out. A final chance to turn back. But I didn't take it. I could have. I should have. But my lips never moved. My voice never came. And just like that, the line was gone. I woke up before the sun. Before the house stirred. Before I had to face what I had done. For a brief moment, before I was fully awake, I thought I had dreamt it. That I had imagined everything, the heat of his breath, the weight of his hands, the way my body had responded without hesitation. But then I shifted under the blankets, and I felt it, the ache. The rawness of my skin. The undeniable proof that last night had been real. Panic hit me so fast it almost stole my breath. My heart pounded, my stomach twisted. My body was betraying me, whispering truths I didn't want to hear. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it all away, but the memories came flooding back, relentless and sharp. I couldn't stay in bed. I couldn't be in this room, wrapped in the air of what had happened. I threw the covers off and forced myself up, my legs shaky beneath me. I made it to the bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Same face. Same tired eyes. But there was something else now. Something in the way my lips were slightly swollen. Something in the way my skin looked, different. Marked, not by bruises, but by something deeper. Something that had taken root inside me. My hands clenched into fists on the counter. I took a slow, shaky breath and whispered to my reflection, "What have I done?" The words hung in the air, accusing, unshakable. I wanted to blame the wine. The loneliness. I wanted to tell myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, something I could forget and move past. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Because even as I stood there, drowning in guilt, there was something else beneath it. Something worse. A pull. A longing. I hated myself for it. I stayed in my room for as long as I could, but eventually, I had to face him. The smell of coffee was the first thing that hit me as I stepped into the kitchen. Rio was already there, leaning against the counter, his fingers wrapped around a mug. He was calm, collected, watching me. I kept my gaze down as I moved toward the coffee pot, my hands cold despite the warmth of the room. If I didn't look at him, if I kept my hands busy, maybe I could get through this. Maybe I could pretend. But Rio wasn't going to let me pretend. Are we just going to act like last night didn't happen? His voice was steady. Sure. Like he wasn't questioning it at all. Like he already knew the answer. I froze. My grip tightened around my coffee cup, the ceramic smooth and grounding beneath my fingertips. I swallowed hard, willing my voice to stay even. I don't know. It was the truth. I didn't know how to process what had happened. I didn't know how to reconcile the way my body had responded with the part of me that still wanted to run. Rio set his mug down and took a step toward me. Not aggressive. Not forceful. Just confident. Like he had already decided something, and he was waiting for me to catch up. Look at me, he said. I couldn't. If I looked at him, I knew I would see it, the thing I had been running from. The thing I had felt last night. The thing I still felt now. I shook my head, my voice barely a whisper. I can't. A beat of silence. Then, softer this time, you don't have to be afraid of this. But that was the problem, wasn't it? I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of myself. I spent the rest of the day avoiding him. Cleaning, running errands, anything to keep myself moving. If I stayed busy enough, maybe I wouldn't have to think. Maybe I wouldn't have to feel. But no matter how much I tried to push it down, it was still there. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Every time I let my mind wander, I felt him. I told myself it was a mistake, that it was nothing more than loneliness playing tricks on me. Then why do you want it to happen again? I hated that voice. That quiet, insidious part of me that whispered in the back of my mind, the part that wasn't drowning in guilt but in longing. Because it wasn't just about last night. It was about what he had given me. The feeling of letting go. The feeling of not having to be strong. The feeling of not having to be the one in control. And the more I thought about it, the more terrifyingly clear it became. I didn't just want that night back. I wanted more. I should have put a stop to it. I should have drawn a line, pulled away, taken back the control I had lost. But control had already slipped through my fingers. And Rio knew it. The shift was subtle at first. Almost unnoticeable. The way he started deciding things for me, small, inconsequential choices that felt harmless. What I should wear. What we should eat. What movie we should watch. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just him being assertive, taking the lead in the way any man might. But then it became more. One evening, I had laid out a dress, something simple, something I had worn 100 times before. I was reaching for it when Rio walked past my room, pausing in the doorway. "Not that one," he said. I turned to look at him, confused. "What?" He nodded toward my closet. "Wear the black one instead." Something in his voice made my stomach tighten. He wasn't asking. He was telling me. Not demanding, not forceful, just, sure. I could have said no. I could have brushed it off, laughed, told him he didn't get to decide what I wore. But I didn't. I put the dress back and reached for the one he had chosen. And when I caught my reflection in the mirror, there was a flicker of something in my eyes. Something that terrified me. Satisfaction. Because I liked obeying him. And I didn't know how to stop. I used to believe I was strong. Independent. Unshakable. But standing there, looking at myself in that dress he had chosen, feeling the way my body reacted to his presence, I wasn't sure if I had ever been any of those things. Maybe I had been waiting for someone to take control all along. And maybe that terrified me more than anything else. They say guilt has a weight to it. That it sits on your chest, pressing down, making it harder to breathe. But guilt isn't heavy. It's hollow. It eats at you from the inside, carving out pieces of who you are until there's nothing left but the parts you don't recognize. I was disappearing. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I wanted to be found. It didn't happen all at once. Losing myself, I mean. It wasn't a sudden thing. It was slow. Subtle. A quiet unraveling. I had spent so long trying to convince myself that I was still in control, that I could stop this whenever I wanted. That I was making choices, not following orders. But at some point, I stopped choosing. I started waiting. For his voice. For his touch. For his approval. And the moment I realized it, I wanted to scream. I looked at myself in the mirror, searching for the woman I used to be. The woman who had raised a son on her own. Who had fought through heartbreak, through betrayal, through loneliness, and survived. I had been strong once. I had been unshakable. But now? Now, I was someone who let him tell me what to wear. Someone who waited for permission before speaking. Someone who had spent her whole life carrying the weight of the world and had finally, willingly, handed it over. Was I always this weak? Or did I just never have someone strong enough to break me? The questions burned, twisting through me, but no matter how many times I asked them, the answer never came. Because I didn't want to know. Maybe this started long before Rio. Maybe I had been unraveling for years. My ex-husband had left me broken. I had spent years pretending I was okay, that I had moved on, that I didn't need anyone. That I could do it all on my own. And maybe, in the end, that was the problem. Maybe I had spent so long being strong that when someone finally came along and told me I didn't have to be, I listened. Maybe I wanted to listen. And maybe that made me just as guilty as him. That night, I told myself it had to stop. That I had to take back control before I lost myself completely. Before I became someone I couldn't face. I found Rio in the living room, sitting in the chair like he belonged there, like he was waiting for me to come to him. His presence filled the space, calm, unwavering. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I forced myself to speak, even though my voice felt small. "This has to stop." He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just tilted his head slightly, like he was waiting for me to keep going. I swallowed hard. "I have to be your mother again. Not this. Not, whatever this is." For the first time, saying the words felt wrong. Like a lie. Rio finally stood, slow and deliberate, stepping toward me. The air between us crackled, something heavy and unspoken stretching between us. And then he reached for me. His fingers found my chin, tilting my face up, just like the first night. "You're mine, Jernai," he murmured. "You know that, don't you?" I should have said no. I should have stepped back, turned away, reclaimed the pieces of myself I had lost. But I didn't. My breath caught, my body frozen, and before I could stop myself, I nodded. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror again. The same mirror I had looked into that morning. But this time, I didn't feel lost. I wasn't searching anymore. I wasn't questioning. Because for the first time in a long, long time, I recognized the woman looking back at me. She wasn't the woman I had been before. She wasn't the mother, the fighter, the survivor I had spent my whole life trying to be. She was something else now. Something darker. Something freer. Something I had always been too afraid to acknowledge. I thought I was losing myself. But maybe, I finally found who I was meant to be. Now, I have a question for you. If you were me, what would you have done? Would you have fought harder? Pulled away? Taken back control? Or would you have done what I did? Would you have let go? Infidelity isn't always black and white. It's not just about broken vows or betrayals in the way we understand them. Sometimes, it's about something deeper. Something we don't talk about. Control. Power. The need to surrender, even when we know we shouldn't. So tell me, was I the victim of my own weakness? Or was I always meant to end up here? Leave a comment below. Like and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel for more stories. Because this isn't just my story. It might be yours, too.